again. This is Selena Teasley.
Right. So as Joan said, you guys both are looking for financial information education. And I'm a firm believer that having that education is honestly the first step to take you to where you want to go. So the seminar is around buying a home, but before you get to that point, there's some steps that you need to do. We need to make sure that we're prepared, because I'm sure you've probably heard people who have a home say the home is draining them or different things like that. When you hear things like that, it's primarily because they were not prepared. They did not have all the education that they needed before they purchased a home. Your home purchase is, for a lot of people, one of the biggest financial purchases that you're going to make. So it behooves you to be as educated as possible about the cost that's associated with it and just about how that's going to look. Because when you get a loan, most loans are 30 years. And so you need to understand what a 30-year mortgage looks like and what comes with that. Go to the next screen, Joan. So what we're going to talk about is, one, how much house can I afford? This is a big one because a lot of times the crisis in 2008, it saw a lot of people just have too much home. And a lot of people started defaulting on loans because the bank started giving them those loans, but honestly, they couldn't afford them. So that's why I put that as the first tip, because I wanted you guys to make sure that sometimes we see things and things look really nice, but we have to be realistic with what our budget can support right now. And I'm in a situation where I'm looking for a home right now, and I know what my budget can support. My home that I want, the home of my dreams, is a little bit bigger than my budget. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna wait a little bit until my budget gets to the point where it can support the home that I can afford. So in order to break that down for you, I'm going to give you what they call the 28-36 rule. This is a rule that's used in the industry just to give you some guidelines on how much house you can afford. We're going to talk about debt to income ratio. That's really important when you're trying to get a loan. Lenders look at your debt to income ratio. So we'll talk about what goes into that. Then I'll talk about some tips for saving for your home purchase. We'll talk about how real estate plays into your net worth, because we're always talking about generational wealth and legacy. And then I'll conclude with, once you get the home, how do we protect that legacy? So how much house can I afford? There's a lot of different factors that goes into this number. The biggest one is the loan amount and the mortgage terms. So if it's a 15-year, 20-year, 30-year, that's going to be a big deciding factor in how big the mortgage payment is. Another one is state property taxes. That is factored into the mortgage price as well. So when you're looking at how much house you can afford, you have to see what are the property taxes in your state and how it's going to change your mortgage payment. Current mortgage rates is a big one. We're in a normal rate environment right now. The past couple of years, the rate environment was really not normal. Those loan rates that we saw, those really low rates, that wasn't normal. This, what we're in right now, the 6 to 7%, honestly, it sucks, but that's the normal rate. So the mortgage rates can drastically dictate how much house you can afford, because a few years ago, you may have been able to afford a little bit more house than you can right now, just because the mortgage rates were so low. HOA and condo fees. A lot of time people don't factor this into how much house they can afford because it's not necessarily a part of the mortgage payment. So you feel like, okay, that mortgage payment is cool, I can do that. But when you add the HOA, or if you're in a condo, add those fees on top of it, it actually increases the mortgage payment. So when you're looking at just overall how much you can afford, you have to make sure that you factor those fees in. That's a big fee that sometimes people tend to just kind of close their eyes and overlook when they're trying to figure out if they can support that mortgage payment. The next one is total monthly debt. If you have 2 cars in your name, you have credit cards, you have loans that you're trying to pay off, then you may not be able to afford as much home because you have other debt obligations. So your total monthly debt definitely going to be a factor. And then, of course, your gross monthly and annual income. Just how much can your annual income support? So one of the rules that lenders look at and that you should look at when you're trying to figure out how much home can I afford is this 28-36 rule. And so what this is really saying is your housing expenses should not be more than 28% of your pre-tax income. And so that includes the monthly principal, the mortgage interest rate, the home insurance, the property taxes, and if you didn't put down 20%, you might have private mortgage insurance. And so when you're doing your calculations of how much house or how much my mortgage should be, you look at your total pre-tax income. And so when I say pre-tax, it's before Uncle Sam touches your money. 28% of that should be your limit of how much house can I really comfortably afford. Now, you may be able to pay more than that, but this rule right here just keeps your mortgage payment at a comfortable level. So you're left to do other things. I've seen that a lot of times with my clients. They have a mortgage payment that they can technically afford to pay, but because it's so high, they really can't do a lot of other things. And so this 28% rule is really designed to keep that mortgage payment comfortable so you can live the rest of your life. Because what you don't want to happen is the term house poor. Have you guys ever heard that somebody's house poor? That means their mortgage is so expensive that that's the only thing that they can pay. And so that's what we're trying to avoid, and just using this as it's a guideline. All of this is just guidelines. Using that as a guideline will hopefully help you not to get into the situation where you're house poor. And so the other number that you should look at is the 36% rule. So your total debt should not exceed 36% of your total pre-tax income. So when I say your total debt, I'm talking about your house expenses, your credit cards, your car loan, all of that should not exceed 36% of your total income. Again, these rules are just designed to help you not overextend yourself. Could you mute iPhone, Joan? Thank you. They're designed just so you don't overextend yourself. And so again, it's guidelines for you to maybe follow just to make sure that the debt that you're taking on, when you get car notes and different things like that, that you're not going to be stressed out paying bills. When people accumulate a lot of debt and they get a lot of these revolving loans and you're paying a 50 to 60% of your overall income, it makes life a little bit tough because you can't do a lot because most of your paycheck is going to pay bills. And so again, this is just some rules and some guidelines. Like it says, a rule of thumb, if you want to stay within these ranges, it just helps things be more comfortable. So the next slide is your debt to income ratio. This is something that lenders do use when they're trying to figure out if you're a good candidate for getting this mortgage. So the debt to income ratio is calculated by using your debt, like credit cards, car loans, any of those different types of loans, along with the housing expense that would be added if you're pre-approved for the mortgage. So if you have a high DTI or debt to income, then that means your debt is high relative to your income. Pretty much you're paying too much debt on the income that you have. You make $1, 60 cents of that dollar is going to pay off debt. You only have 40 cents left to live. So that's what a high DTI is. And lenders you're riskier if you have a high DTI, because if you get in trouble because your debt is too high, you may default on the loan. And so that's why this is one of the things that they really look at when they're trying to figure out if they're going to approve you for the loan. And so another rule of thumb, and this is different for different lenders, like different lenders have different percentages. This is not a hard and fast rule. Once you get ready to get to the point where you are pre-approved and going down that road, whatever lender that you're working with, they'll let you know what DTI they're looking for. But by just doing some research, I saw that the number 43% came up a lot in my research on lenders prefer borrowers whose DTI is 43% or less. And then they'll often offer them better interest rates if you have lower debt. So it's almost like you get rewarded by keeping your debt down, just like you get rewarded by having a higher credit score. The higher the credit score, the better the interest rate. So this is definitely something, if you're getting ready or getting in that mindset to get ready to buy a home, you have to look at how much debt you're carrying, because having a higher interest rate can be the difference in thousands of dollars being added to your loan in interest. So now that we've talked about what's being looked at, before you start even looking at getting pre-approved, right? So we got to take a look at our debt. We got to make sure that going into this thing, we understand how much home that we want to afford, that we want to carry, because we want to still be comfortable. We want to be able to live life, to travel and different things like that. Once we've passed those steps, then now we have to save for this home purchase, because there's going to be a down payment or closing costs, depending on whatever type of situation you have. You may have to put a down payment down. There are programs out there, depending on the lender and your situation, where you may be able to not put a down payment down. But in any event, it's still good to save for your home purchase, because even if you don't have the down payment, you're going to have moving expenses. You're going to want new furniture. There's a lot of expenses that come with getting into a home. Because you know how we are. When we get something new, we're going to want a new bed. Even though your bed right now is fine, we're going to want to buy a new bed. We're going to want a new sofa. And so those are some things that sometimes a lot of people, in saving for their down payment, they may forget to save for the extra stuff that comes with moving into a home. And so a few tips that I have for you tonight in saving for this home purchase. So create a spending plan. So I put in parentheses budget, because that's the word that people use, create a budget. Me personally, when I work with my clients, I like to use the word spending plan, because psychologically, it feels a little bit better. Budget feels restrictive. You feel like you can't do something because you're on a budget. A spending plan is just giving you a plan for how you're going to spend your money. Now, you may say, Selena, that's the same daggone thing. And you're right, it is. But psychologically, having a spending plan gives you more control, because it's like you're planning out your purchases. Instead of having a budget, it feels restrictive. So whatever you need to do to make this thing feel better, then do that. And so that's why I try to use spending plan for my clients instead of the word budget. But you need to create a spending plan to see how much discretionary income you have left. So when I say discretionary income, that's the income that you have left over after you've paid all your bills. So if you made $1,000 and your bills were $400, then you have $600 in discretionary income to do something with it. You can either save it, spend it, do whatever your spending plan tells you, but that's the discretionary income you have left over. Once you figure out how much discretionary income you have, that's when you figure out how much you want to save. One of the biggest things that I tell my clients to make them successful is automate your savings. Because if you leave it up to yourself to move the money into your savings account, there's going to be some months when you talk yourself out of moving that money. You're going to put something else in that priority space where you're just going to talk yourself into, oh, I can use it for X, Y, and Z this month. I'll save it next month. And then you're going to do 3 months of that and realize that 3 months have gone by and you haven't saved. And so in order to make you more successful to hit whatever savings goal you have, try to automate it. You can do it through your bank. I know with my bank account, I use Bank of America. I can automate taking money out of one account and move it into another. I have savings account with different banks. You can automate taking money out of those banks and put it out of your checking account and put it into the savings account. So this is, once my client put their savings and their investing and things like that on autopilot, that's when they really become successful, because you remove yourself from the equation. Another tip is temporarily downsize your spending. So I say temporarily because we're trying to hit a goal. Whenever you're trying to hit a goal, you may have to make some temporary changes. And so saving for your house, you may have to, just for a little while, downsize your spending, not spend as much on just like discretionary stuff, not go out to eat as much, maybe eat at home some, just so you have more money to save. Once you reach your goal and you do what you need to do, you can go back to your original spending plan. So it's just an idea or just a thought to maybe you need to downsize a little bit just so you can have more money to save. And so you build up that savings faster. Another tip is to pay off that high interest debt. Most high interest debt comes in the form of credit card. So try to pay those credit cards off as fast as possible. And then once you get those credit cards paid off, continue to act like you're paying those payments and just save the money. One, is going to get you extra savings. And two, you're actually going to be saving money, saving more money because you're not going to be paying that high interest debt. Credit cards, while they're a good thing if used correctly, can definitely, if you, like I say, use them incorrectly, cost you a lot of money because the interest rate on credit cards tends to be pretty high if you don't have like that introductory period. So try to pay off that high interest debt. Once you get it paid off, save those payments. And then the last tip, any extra money you receive, if you get a raise from work or you get a tax refund, or a lot of people have now, they have side hustles where they're making money on the side. Any extra money that you get, save that money. You have a goal that you're trying to reach. That should be your primary focus. So anything that you're getting extra that's not needed to help you live, you don't need it for your bills, then just think about saving it. The quicker you can get to your goal, whatever that number is, the quicker you can move into your new home. And another tip that I didn't have on here is make sure that you know what that number is. A lot of times we say, oh, I'm going to save money. And then I ask my client, well, how much do you need to save? And I get deer in headlights. If you don't have a target, if you don't know how much you're trying to save, it's going to be hard to get there. Having that target gives you something tangible to look at. It gives you a tangible goal that you know you're trying to hit. That's motivation. If you know you're trying to hit $20,000 and you see your account go from 5 to 10 to 15, you know you're close to 20, that last $5,000 is going to be easy because you know you're approaching your goal. If you don't have a goal and you're kind of just saving money and you don't know how much you need to save, it lacks motivation because you can say, well, I guess this is enough. Or, I really don't know how much I need. It's just, again, it's mindset. Anything you can do to trick yourself into doing what you need to do, I say do it. And so that's one of the biggest things, that when you're creating just a financial plan and you're defining your goals, make sure that you define your goals in a smart way where you have them to be measurable, you have a target, and you know exactly what you're trying to hit. Next slide, Joan. So creating a spending plan. I wanted to put this in here because a lot of times when we sit down and create a budget, a lot of people that I've spoken with and a lot of my clients, sometimes they don't know where to start or how to do this. This is a big part of creating and accomplishing a goal, because you can create as many goals as you want. But if you don't understand how much discretionary income you have and how much you have to apply to those goals, it's going to be hard to reach them. So when you're creating goals, you always have to have concrete numbers. I have $500 left over every month. Of this $500, I'm going to put this toward this goal. I'm going to put this toward my investing goal. You need to have a distinct plan of what you're going to do with every dollar. That is going to help you, again, be more successful in hitting your goals. And so very simply, creating a spending plan is determine your income. That may seem like, Selena, that's real common sense. I need to determine my income. But in today's age, like I said earlier, sometimes we have these side hustles and you have money coming in from different places and you haven't quantified how much money you actually have coming into the home. I worked with a client once that didn't realize she was making $3,500 a month in her side business. because she never really sat down to quantify how much money she was making. And so one, determine your income from all sources, not just the income on your job. If you do extra things, make sure you're taking that into consideration as well. So once you determine your income, you have to figure out what your true expenses are. A lot of times when people sit down to create a budget, they sit down and create the budget based on what they think they're spending. Oh, I eat out maybe like twice a week and it's like $15. So we're going to do $30 a week eating out. Or last week I spent $60 in the grocery store. So I'm going to budget this amount for grocery. And then you try to live by this budget and realize you can't. And then you're frustrated and say budgeting doesn't work. Creating a spending plan doesn't work. It's not that it doesn't work. It's your budget wasn't realistic to begin with because you spend way more than $30 a week eating out. And so in order to figure out what your true expenses are, I recommend looking at 60 to 90 days worth of statements. If you use your debit card to buy purchases, use your bank statements. If you use your credit cards, use those statements. If you use a combination of different things, use all the statements. Look at 60 to 90 days worth of your statements and really look at how much money you spent eating out. Look at how many times you see Amazon show up on your statements. You have to be realistic with how much money you're spending before you can see how much you have left over. That's why people think budgeting or creating a spending plan doesn't work, because they're creating it based on what they feel like they're doing and not what they're really doing. So once you have what your true expenses are and you see that you actually spent $500 last month on Amazon, then you can have a conversation with yourself. Okay, Selena, I spent $500 on Amazon. I didn't realize it, but I did have a package coming to the house every day. You have that number now that you can make some educated decisions about. And so now you know that in order to reach your goal, you can't spend $500 on Amazon. And so that allows you to be able to cut back to a realistic number because now you know what you're working with. So this is the biggest thing in creating your spending plan. And this is where a lot of people go wrong. And this is why they feel like it don't work, because their spending plan is not realistic to what they're doing. So figure out what those expenses are. If you need to use an app, apps like Mint, they'll tell you like the different categories of like how much money you spent. And so you can really, if you don't want to go line by line with your statements, you can use different apps to help you categorize your spending so you can see where you're starting from. Once you see your starting place, then you can figure out how much you need to cut back. And then you can figure out how you can cut back. But you can't do any of this without the data. So now that we have the data and our feelings are hurt, because we didn't realize that we were spending $600 a month eating out, we can now calculate what our discretionary income is, because from that data, you can see what's realistic. If you cut back a few $100s in different categories, you can really see how much income you have left over in order to use for whatever goal you're trying to hit, whether it's buying a home or you want to start investing or you need to buy a car, any type of goal. Now you have concrete data on how much money you have to apply to that goal. And then what that also gives you is how long it's going to take for you to hit that goal. And so that's how you calculate the discretionary income. And then the last step, of course, is take that discretionary income. And if buying a home is your top number one goal and you're not trying to worry about anything else right now, you're just trying to save for this down payment, then take that discretionary income and put it into your house fund. Another tip that I just thought about that I didn't have on the prior page is create a different savings account for your house fund. So we have a savings account for our emergency fund, which should have at least 3 to 6 months of your expenses. What that fund does is if anything pops up, if you get a flat tire, if any type of emergency, you can use that fund. You should have a separate house fund that you're saving for your house into. So if possible, have those two different funds and you can see how much money you have going into your house fund. So now that we're saving, we know how much we can save. We're saving it, remember, automatically into our house fund. Once you have whatever that number is, put it on automatic. Take yourself out of the equation. Give yourself a fighting chance of being successful. You do that by removing yourself from the equation. So once we have all of that set up, we have our savings on autopilot. Now we're thinking about other things that come with this home. And so some unexpected expenses that some people don't think about are repairs. When you become a homeowner, you can no longer call the maintenance office and say, my dishwasher broke. You are maintenance. And so that's where that emergency fund that you have is going to come in handy because it's going to be used to take care of those emergencies that is not necessarily your spending plan month to month. So repairs are something that you should prepare for. Upgrades. When you get into the house, you may want to, if it's not a new home, you may want to upgrade like the faucets, you may want new appliances, anything that you want to do in this house to make it yours is going to cost money. So that's something else that you need to think about when you're thinking about how much is it going to cost to get into this home. Higher utilities. If you're coming from an apartment, a 1-bedroom apartment, and you're now moving into a 3-bedroom house, you need to change your utilities in your spending plan because it's just going to be higher. You're heating more square footage, you're cooling more square footage. So your utilities are going to be a little bit higher. Pest control, that's not going to be done by your apartment complex anymore either. And so you may have to have pest control come out. And then exterior care. If you are not in an HOA where they take care of the properties for you, you're going to have to either cut the grass yourself or pay for somebody to cut your grass and keep your yard looking nice. So these are just a few expenses that sometimes in the excitement of being a homeowner, we really don't sit down until they happen and think about these expenses. And this is where you hear people say, oh my God, owning a home is so expensive. Yeah, it's a little bit more expensive than renting. But if you've already thought through all of this and you're aware of these things happening, it's not going to feel bad when they happen. The only time you're like all down and out is you're not prepared for them. You don't have that emergency fund and you haven't thought through the process of what am I going to do if this happens? Handling unexpected expenses is just a byproduct of being prepared for them. So net worth. So when we get this home, real estate builds wealth for us. Once you put it on your balance sheet, it builds wealth for you. And so it changes your net worth. So how you calculate your net worth and what your home is going to do for it is this equation in the middle. So you take all of your assets and you subtract your liabilities, and that's what your net worth is. And so now when you have this home, it's going to go on your balance sheet with everything else that you own. And so the asset is the price of the home. The liability is the mortgage. So even though it is on your balance sheet as an asset, you still have a big liability in the mortgage payment that you're paying. As you pay the mortgage down and as the home appreciates, your net worth is going to go up. And so when you talk about creating wealth over generations, this is simply how that happens. You get a home, you pay the mortgage down, and over time, the price or how much the house is worth, it goes up. And so the difference between that, like I said, is net worth. You start to create equity in the home. That's how you start creating like the wealth generation. So again, as you pay your mortgage down and your house appreciates, that's what causes your net worth to go up. So the last thing that I'll talk about is protecting your legacy, because you're buying this home for your family to enjoy. It's probably your largest purchase that you're going to make financially, because you're having this home. The note on this home normally is for 30 years. And so when you get something like this, when you make a commitment of this magnitude, you need to make sure that you're protecting it. And so there's a few different ways you can do it. You can have a will. So with having a will is a document that you put things, your assets inside of this document, and you tell the document, or you have your will constructed in a way that you want this thing to go here, or I want my jewelry to go here. It's a way for your family to know when you pass away, what do you want to happen to your stuff. And so another document that you can get is a trust. Now, a trust is what you'll put the home in and I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but if you want to avoid probate with your home, you can put it inside of a trust and it avoids probate. Power of attorney document is another document that you want to have. This document is for when you're here. So if something happens to you and you are unable to make decisions for yourself, the power of attorney documents gives somebody the power to make decisions for you. So that document pretty much protects your interests. And then life insurance. If you're going to buy a home and you're paying the mortgage and you have children and people are dependent on this home, you should have enough life insurance that if something happens to you, they're actually able to pay off the home and enjoy the home and not have to worry about a mortgage because you're no longer there. Life insurance isn't for you. It's for your family. It's for the people that are depending on you. It's for the people that your paycheck goes to. Life insurance should help replace your paycheck. And so, like I said, if you have small kids or someone living in the home, they're already going to be devastated that you're not there. Let's make life a little bit easier. Have enough life insurance that if they want to, they can pay off the home. And that's instant equity. Net worth on the balance sheet is going up because now you've removed the liability portion of this home. And now how much it's worth is just left on the balance sheet. So these are just 4 important things that you can do that when you get the home, let's take it one step further and think about how am I going to protect the legacy that I'm trying to build? And these are some things that you can put in place. Most of the first 3 things are legal. So you may have to get a lawyer involved or do something like that. And then life insurance, you can get it from somebody like myself who sells life insurance. And that is the end of my presentation. I hope you guys learned a few gems, a few nuggets on how to create a spending plan. That was the biggest thing that I wanted you guys to take away because that's where it starts. It starts with getting your finances in order, understanding how much money you have coming in, understanding how much money you have going out, and then understanding with what's left, what you're going to do with it. That's how you put yourself in a position to start saving for the home. And then while you're saving, getting those other things together, making sure that you're thinking about your debt to income ratio, bringing that down, those percentages that we talked about earlier, when you're thinking about how much home you can afford. Again, those are just guidelines, but they're meant to help you and make sure that you don't fall into the category of being house poor, like we talked about earlier. So again, I hope you guys got something out of my presentation. And now I'm going to turn it over to Joan. So once you get all of that stuff together and now you're ready to actually start the process, you're going to call Joan because she's the person that's going to take you from start to finish.
Look, I was like, I don't know how to unmute myself, but that was amazing, right, guys? I know a lot of you are punching yourself because Selena she's a trigger warning. I should have gave y'all a trigger warning at the beginning because the financial part of it is she make you look at stuff. Them Amazon packages coming to the front door every day. Trigger. So yes. So I hope you guys got some great nuggets out of that. I know I did. Saw some stuff that I needed to hear. But yeah, we definitely do not want you to be house poor. And as I go into my segment, it's not really going to I am going to break down the home buyers process, but I'm also kind of feed off some of the things that Selena said, because even as a realtor, I do not like to take my clients to the top of their budget. The top, if they get a pre-approval for 350,000 or 400, 450, if we can find something where they have a little wiggle room, great. But if they have to go to the top of their budget to get absolutely what they need in a home, then we will. I'm not going to stop you from getting the home that you want, but I will educate you on, you don't need to have the most expensive home in the community, right? Because once it's time to sell, you had the most expensive home in the community, right? So you want to make money off of it, but everybody else over here, you know, they got a good deal. So that's her tips are really going to lead me into what I'm going to talk to you about. So what I'm going to start with is, a lot of people are still wondering, is now a good time to buy? So I'm going to just show you some rental statistics that are right here in Atlanta. After that, we're going to go over the benefits and the drawbacks of purchasing a home. Selena also touched on that a little bit. Why use a realtor or a real estate agent when purchasing a home? And also, we're going to talk about preparing yourself, what type of loans will work for you. And then we'll talk about the cash that you will need to get you to the closing table and after, basically. So the rental statistics, let's talk about that. Rent in Atlanta. Y'all, I'm getting hot talking about the rent already. So it is 48% of the rentals in Atlanta are $2,100 plus right now in Atlanta. The average rent is between $1,790 and $2,420. Now that is showing apartments, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments. So when people are saying, oh, it's not cheaper, it's cheaper to rent, it's cheaper to rent, when you think about it, it's really not. Because as Selena stated, when you purchase a home, that's an asset. You're building wealth. That is a part of your net worth. When you're renting, you don't own that. So you're literally giving away that money every year, right? So with that being said, renters are paying between $21,000, let's just say $22,000. Between $22,000 and $30,000 a year for 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments. And some people are renting homes, but again, they're paying somebody else's mortgage and not their own. Most landlords and management companies need renters to make at least 3 times the rental amount in order for you to even get approved for the apartment or the home. So let's just 3 times the limits that the average rental rate is. Now you need to make, and if you're a single person, you need to make at least $65,000 to $88,000 annually. That's outrageous, for the median income in Atlanta being less than 40,000. So what do you have to do now? You either have to get a roommate, you have to be stuck in a relationship. If you're not happy in this relationship, people are staying in marriages and staying in relationships because it's safer, because I can't do this on my own, right? So I just wanted to kind of scratch the surface on what the rent looks like. So when people are asking questions like, is it still a good time to purchase? If we're already paying these amounts on something that we're renting, something that we don't own, if something happened to you tomorrow, you can't leave that to your family. If they can't afford it, guess what? The landlord is on to the next renter. Your family has to be uprooted and they have to figure it out, because this landlord is going to want their money. We're going to talk about something on another day that's called mortgage insurance after you close on the home. That will help, but you have to have a mortgage, So this is just giving you an overview of what the rental market in Atlanta looks like. And then we'll talk about, if you want to talk about after what a mortgage looks like, you can kind of compare the two. So here are the benefits of owning a home or purchasing a home. Ownership, like I stated before, you will own that home. Nobody can make you leave that home. Nobody can, unless you stop paying the mortgage, nobody's going to come and put you out. You know, if you're renting a home or an apartment, I will say a home, because in the last few years, a lot of investors have sold their rental properties to get the cash out, because they probably bought it for 80,000. In the past few years, we've seen homes double and triple in price. So a lot of people cashed out their rental properties. So guess what those renters had to do? They either had to find somewhere equal to where they were in a market where the rental prices have now doubled, or they had to get their life together and purchase a home. If they weren't in a position to purchase a home, and as we saw before, they're not in a position to go out and find another rental property, because now the rentals are asking for 3 times the rent. You basically have to have the credit and the income to rent that you could just go and purchase a home. It's wild, and I don't know how people are doing it, but they are doing it, right? So when you own a home, as stated, you're building wealth, you're creating generational wealth. Like we said, if anything happens to you, that your family will get the home. Now, if you haven't set it up, it will go through probate. Those type of things do happen. So that's a good thing for Selena to help you guys with. We also have other resources for the legal side of it. If you own a home and you want to set up, you know, if something happens to you, what you would do with that property. You get tax deductions. I always say we pay rent, we pay these landlords all of this money on a mortgage, and most of them don't even have a mortgage. So we're just putting money in their account every month. Every month. They may send you a statement that says, thank you for your payment. They might. Some people don't even get that. They just see the money going, and we don't even think about it, because we're just thinking, okay, my rent $1,200 a month. That's nothing. But when you think about over a year, that's $24,000 a year. And then you've been there 5 years, that's 60, you know, like, just, you have to look at it at the total number. So you know how much money you're putting into this rental property when you could be putting it into your own property and building your own wealth. You get tax deductions when you own a home. So every year it's like a dependent. You may not get as much, but you do get a tax break when you own a home. It helps you build your credit. So if you've heard or spoken to a credit specialist or a credit restoration specialist, and the first thing they tell you, or you've spoken to a lender and maybe your credit wasn't where it needed to be, the first thing they tell you to do, or if your credit is good, but it's just not high because you don't have enough credit, one of the things that they will tell you to do is to either go take out a secured credit card or get a personal loan. So as long as you're paying your mortgage on time, and a lot of people just have it directly deposited out of, debited out of their account, so they're not missing a payment. As long as you're making those payments on time, it's a 30-year mortgage. So they see you're paying it, they see you're able to take care of this mortgage, and you're not missing any payments, your credit is going to continue to grow. A lot of drawbacks that we will have, that homeowners do have, is going to be the maintenance and repairs. Again, you no longer have a landlord, you no longer have the maintenance crew that you put in a maintenance request and they're going to come out, do the plumbing, fix your water leaks or anything like that. The maintenance and repairs are now going to be on you. So as Selena said, you need to have a spending plan for those type of situations. Once you close on the house, you want to have, and that's why most of the lenders, not all of the lenders, they look at your reserves. They look at further than if you have the money after closing to pay your mortgage. They look at your reserves as far as, will you be able to pay this mortgage for consecutively? If something happened to your job, you couldn't work, that is what reserves are. So if you've spoken to a lender and they're like, we need to look at your reserves, this is what they're talking about. They want to make sure that if anything happens to you, happens to your job, you're still able to pay that mortgage. And if something happens in the house, you're still able to get that repair made, but also still pay your mortgage, right? That's the term, that's where the term came from, house poor. oh my God, something's happening to my pipes burst. So now you have to make a decision to get your pipes fixed, but are you going to have that money to pay your mortgage when it's time? Because you had to do a repair that you did not plan on making. So a lot of people have the mental thought process that you need $20, $30, $40, $50,000 to purchase a house, to close on a home. You do not. There are plenty of loan programs where the down payment can be between 3 to 5%. We also have programs where you can receive 100% financing. But again, we need to make sure that credit is good. You still need reserves, and you still will have need cash to get to the closing table, because there are other fees in the home buying process. Interest rates are too high. So is food, but we're still eating. So is food, but I just bought eggs. They were $9. So, I just look at it like, think about a car. We will go out here and buy a new car and not think twice about that 19.999% APR. Nobody thinks twice about that APR on that car. But when it comes to buying a home, a 5.2% interest rate is too much. That car is gonna depreciate as soon as you drive off the lot. You try to resell it 2 years from now, you're not gonna get what you paid for it. A home is gonna appreciate. If you see what happened the past 2 years, these people bought their houses in the 200s and now they're selling them for almost $500,000. Who cares about the interest rate? I can refinance that eventually. Work on getting your house, get your mortgage. It's yours, it's your home. You're building your wealth. You're leaving your legacy. And as soon as those interest rates even look like they're about to go down, get your lender on the phone. Hey, what are the rates looking like? What was my rate when I purchased my house? Okay, is it a good time to refinance? That is the only question you should have. Is it a good time to refinance? Because I already bought my house. Is it a good time to refinance? Date the rate, marry the home. I want you to wake up singing that. Date the rate and marry the home. Credit. My credit is not where I want it to be. There are loan products that will allow you to purchase a home with a 580 credit score or higher. Now, with that being said, I personally, as your realtor, would want you to get that score as high as possible. So what we would do is put you with the lender so that they can give you a credit plan so that you can get that credit higher than 600 or at least to a 620, because that's where you're going to see the better interest rates. You have a lower score, you're going to have a higher interest rate. So the better your credit, the better your interest rate is going to be. So yes, you may see ads, you may hear real estate agents say, I have a loan product. If your credit score is 580, we can get you into a home. And yes, you can refinance that home, but you do not want to go into a home being house poor. I want y'all to keep that word in mind as well. I don't want you to go into a home where you're struggling, where you're regretting your decision that you decided to purchase this home. So if it takes a few months for us to get your credit where it needs to be, then that's what we're going to do. It's just delayed, not denied. That's what I call it. It's delayed, not denied. You're not denied. We just want to get you to a better place so that you're comfortable. And you can also apply and get a little bit more money for the house that you want. So your credit also will determine how much house you can afford. So the higher that score, the better that interest rate. And you may also be able to afford a little bit more house because that rate is now going down. Okay, so why use a realtor? We all have these new construction companies where there is an on-site agent, and you can just walk in the model home and you say, I just wanted to come by and see the house. And then the agent talks you into, I was that agent, I'm sorry. The agent talks you into, oh, well, you should talk to my lender. The lender sends a pre-approval. Next thing you know, you just stopped by to see a house. Now you're under contract. But you do not have your own agent. That agent that sits in that office works exclusively for that builder, for that seller. If you call a sign that you see in front of a house, that agent works exclusively for that seller. Yes, they can represent you as a customer, but they don't have the same duties to you as they have to their client, which is the seller. So I always tell people, having your own agent, going to closing without your own agent is like going to trial without your own lawyer. You are not versed in the documentation, in the lingo. You don't know what you're signing. You know, we're excited. I got the house. I put down $1,000 at a new construction, and I'm building a house from the ground up. You're excited. But when it comes to questions like, should I get an inspection, things like that, that on-site agent is going to give you a spiel that you don't need an inspection. And then you get in your house, and 6 months later, I had this happen to a client, your sink caves in. You should have had your own inspection. This is why you need your own realtor. Not only that, they negotiate on your behalf. So if you go in there calling signs in front of houses because you just want to see the inside, and then this agent is like, oh, I can write the deal up. They work for the seller. You're now unrepresented. You really don't have any wiggle room. You're going to go in at asking price. They're probably not going to pay any closing costs because they're doing what they need to do to get the best deal for their client. You're just a customer. It saves you time. We all have jobs. We all work. So while you're at work, your realtor is also at work, but they're working for you. So while you're at work, your realtor is at work looking for your home, sending you home so that you don't have to spend your time Googling on Zillow, on Realtor.com, having 3 and 4 apps on your phone to make sure you catching the house before it hits the market or when it hits the market. Your agent is already on that. We have access to the MLS. I put my clients on a drip campaign. So as soon as something hits the market in their search criteria, in their price point, they get an email to their they get the link to their email like, hey, a new home hit the market in your price point. So they're able to take a look at that home, see if it's something that they want to see. And if they're at work and they're like, this is it, guess who's going to go out and look at that home for them to make sure that's it? Me. I'm going to go out. I'm going to do a video. I'm going to take pictures, whatever I need to do for my client to see that home before anybody else that is at work, right? Interprofessional network. The organization that I am a part of has over 300 agents, and most of them are in the Atlanta metro area. You know what happens in our group chat? As soon as we have a coming soon listing, we get that information in the group chat. Hey, I have a listing coming soon in this area, in this price point. Guess who gets first dibs on that? The other agents who have buyers. And then if they have a house that's already on the market and I have a new client that just came on board, I can hit that agent up. Hey, do you have any offers? Because we want to work together and we want to keep the money in-house. Also, if they're not in-house, it's still great to have great professional work relationships with other agents because of that same reason. They really don't have to be in my organization, but if I have relationships with other agents in my area, it's great to see a familiar name on a contract when you have a listing. The ethics and expertise. Notice that I'm saying realtor and not always real estate agent, because there are a lot of licensed real estate agents, but not all of those real estate agents are realtors. So to be a realtor, you have to pay a fee, which are considered dues, every year to your board. Realtors are held to the National Association of Realtors, ethics and expertise. So we have a total different line of ethics than real estate agents. We're very knowledgeable about our market. This is what we do every day. So we study the market. We know what's the median sales prices. We know if the sellers are paying closing costs. We know if it's a buyer's market, if it's a seller's market. We educate ourselves on the market. So when it's time to negotiate on your behalf, we get those under contracts, because that's the goal. We don't want you to lose out on every house that you see, every house that you wanted, because we're uneducated and we are just writing offers that are not being accepted. We understand the transaction fully and can answer any and all of your questions. Now, there will be times where I don't have the answer, but I'm not going to just give you an answer. I'm going to direct you, Say if it's a mortgage question, I'm going to direct you back to the lender. If it's a question, if it's a legal question, I have attorneys that I can direct you to. So you're not alone. All your questions will be answered, but if I'm not professionally prepared to answer that, I'm going to find the person who can answer those questions for you in their line of work. Because I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a mortgage broker. I will get you to the right people who can answer those questions. All right, so how do you prepare prior to purchasing a home? So before you even get the lender on the phone, before you even click apply for the mortgage, you want to do your own due diligence. You want to go in knowing that you are prepared. So you want to check your credit score. Every year, everyone is able to pull their free credit profile from freecreditreport.com. So that's the first thing that I usually do send to my buyers. If they say they do not know what their credit is, and you will be amazed. A lot of people just do not know what their credit score is. Most of the time it's because the last time they checked, it wasn't that great. So they kind of just gave up, so they don't keep up with it. But the first thing you want to do is always pull that free credit report and get an idea of what your credit score is. You want to budget and save for as much as possible. I cannot stress that enough, because even if we can get you approved for a 100% finance loan, you still have other fees that are going to be due during the buying process. We may also may not be able to get closing costs paid by the seller, so you need to be prepared to at least pay your own closing costs. Also, like Selena stated before, you get a new house. You may want to buy new furniture. You may want to decorate. You don't want to move into your home and feel like you have to you got to live paycheck to paycheck to paycheck until you get your house fully furnished. So you want to go ahead and budget. Well, let's say, create your spending plan. Create your spending plan and save for as much as possible. Find a realtor. Of course, I would hope that you guys would work with me, but if not, find a real estate agent or a realtor who who you can trust, and then they will connect you to a lender. A lot of people like to use their banks, but I will tell you, even though you have a relationship with your bank, mortgages is not the bank's first line of income. So they're a lot stricter. They really don't want to handle the mortgages, because if you default on the loan, guess who has to now take care of that house, get it resold? It goes back to the bank. So a lot of times the mortgages with the banks are going to be a lot stricter. You have to have a higher credit score. You have to have a great debt to income ratio. So we take you to the mortgage brokers. Mortgage brokers have a network of lenders that they can run your credit through, and they will find the best company that will work for you. Then you have your Home Bridges and your New American Fundings and all of those, your Home Stars. They are also mortgage brokers. So they usually have a lot more loan products available, which is where you come into the 100% financing, the USDA loans, all of those good things. The banks are usually just going to go straight FHA, VA, USDA. Did I say USDA or conventional? So that's usually what you're going to get from a bank. Now, there are some banks that do have 100% financing, but your credit has to be basically immaculate for those. Now, let the fun begin. You found your realtor has connected you to your lender. Now we are going to figure out what your budget is. Figuring out what your budget is, we've talked to the lender, they've pulled your credit, they've saw all of your W-2s, your tax statements, everything that you've given them, showing how much money you have coming in and how much money you have going out compared to your credit. Now we know how much you can afford. With that being said, we need to keep in mind the budget in the area. We all know the city of Atlanta, the metro Atlanta, there are so many areas that you can live in. Most people with children want to live in the good school districts. That's the first thing on their list. I want a great school district for my child. But what happens when an area is known for a great school district? The prices are going to be higher, right? So we need to keep that in mind. You need to do your research, do your homework, do your drive-bys, and see what area you want to be in. How soon do you want to move? That is something else you need to know for a fact when you go to apply for the loan and get with the realtor and you want to start looking at homes. I've had so many people reach out to me and say, hey, I want to buy a house, but I want to go ahead and talk to the lender and get my pre-approval, but I don't want to move until next year. Well, your pre-approval is only good for 90 days. So you wanting to move next year, you only need to start 90 days or 60 days before the time that you need to move. Because by the time we find the house, get you under contract, even if you're building a house, I know you're probably wondering, like, what do people do when they're building a house and it takes them 6 months to get it built? Yes, 30 days before closing or within those 30 days, their credit is repulled. Like they're literally going through the pre-approval process all over again because that credit profile it's only good for 90 days. So they have to make sure that, yes, 6 months ago, you were qualified for this amount, but it's been more than 90 days. We need to make sure before you get to closing that you're still able to afford this house, your credit is still good, and you have not applied for any new credit, any new loans, you haven't done anything like that. So if you hear realtors tell you, once you get a pre-approval, do not go shopping on your credit. Do not open any new lines of credit. Do not go buy furniture on your credit. Do not purchase a car on your credit. This is why, because the lender is still going to pull your credit again. So you need to make sure you keep that intact no matter how long you're under contract. Keep your emotions in check. A lot of people see a home, they fall in love with the home. We write an offer on the home. You go under contract, you're excited. You've already furnished the house in your head. You cannot wait to move into this home. And then the seller decides that they're fine, breach of contract, I'm not selling. I'm not leaving my home. Or the appraisal comes in and it's $30,000 lower than what the contracted amount is. And the seller is like, no, I'm not dropping the price. Now we have to pull out of that contract. You can't be emotionally attached to this property until you have the keys in your hand. It's a lot of trauma. It's a lot of trauma that goes into you being emotionally attached to a home and it being ripped out of your hand by no fault of your own. So we do not get emotionally attached to properties until we leave the closing table and we have keys in our hands. Be available. Be physically available for your lender and your realtor, because in a real estate transaction, time is of the essence. So if your lender is sending you documents, you need to have those documents returned back as soon as possible to keep the transaction going smoothly. If your realtor is sending you documents such as amendments or addendums or things like that, you need to get those sent back as soon as possible, because again, it keeps the transaction moving smoothly. Also, you can't purchase a home if you're not available to view homes. So you have your realtor sending you these homes, but then you're never available to go and view the homes. You need to be available to physically go and see the home, unless you are relocating to a different state and you just physically can't be there, and then we'll make changes, or we'll make do videos, pictures, whatever needs to happen if you are relocating to the area. But if you're physically in that area, in that state, you need to make yourself available to see these properties, because if we write a contract and you have not seen it, and then we get under contract and you go out to the house, who's to say you're not gonna still love the house once you see it in person? So just make yourself available. Make sure you give your realtor a good schedule for you, so that when they set up the homes, they know that these are times that you are going to be available and you don't have to rush through anything. You can take your time and make sure that that house is the best fit for you. Okay, so what type of loan is right for you? So there are several different types of loans, but right now we're only going to talk about conventional loans, On the conforming loan sides, you have the conventional mortgages and fixed rate mortgages. Right now, that's all we deal with are fixed rate mortgages. The adjustable rate mortgages are pretty much null and void because that is where you get into the recession when people were losing their homes because that balloon rate, it's a balloon. So they missed one payment, now they have to pay the entire payment. Or they got to a certain point of the loan, of the years of the loan, and now they have to pay that loan off. They weren't educated when they purchased a house. They just knew, hey, this is a good loan amount. This is a good mortgage for me. And they're paying it. But at that year 15, now the total loan, the rest of the house needs to be paid off. And they didn't have it. So that's how a lot of people lost their home. So the mortgage world kind of got rid of that when it comes to regular loans, and we don't even really talk about them or bring them up. You want a fixed rate mortgage. If you see anything other than fixed rate, we need to have a conversation with that lender. Non-conforming loans are FHA loans, USDA loans, VA loans, and jumbo loans. Jumbo loans are usually when you're buying $1 million properties because there are limits on certain loans. So like FHA in a certain area, their limit could be 520,000 based off of that median income area. So if you were buying $1 million home, you could use a jumbo loan, and it's basically putting two loans together to give you the amount that you need to purchase a house. So we don't even need to talk about that either. So the main ones that we focus on are conventional, FHA, USDA, and VA. And the VA we all know is the veteran product. You have to have served in the military at some point for a certain amount of time, and you have to also be eligible to receive the VA loan. And all of those are going to be fixed rate mortgages. With the FHA loans, those are going to be your more lenient loans. They are going to be, they are federally backed. So the FHA, the USDA, and the VA are the more lenient. So they're backed by federal government, of course. So this is why you can have a credit score as low as 580. But do be very mindful that with FHA loans, you will have what is called a mortgage premium. So this mortgage premium will last the life of the loan. So that's why your FHA loan would be a little bit higher in payment than your conventional loans, because conventional, the buyers who you can use conventional have shown that they know how to use credit and maintain credit. So they have the 640 and higher credit score. When you look at FHA loan, they are allowing people to come in and purchase homes at that 580 that we were talking about. So they're a little bit more riskier. So they have to be federally backed just in case that buyer defaults on that loan, that mortgage insurance is gonna, and when I say this mortgage premium insurance, it's not protecting you as the buyer, it's protecting the lender. So that mortgage insurance is the federal government protecting that lender for lending you, a riskier buyer, this loan product. So if you default on your loan, the lender is going to make they're going to get paid off, and then the government, that's when we get into HUD homes and things like that. That's how the government gets those type of properties, because people defaulted on FHA loans. USDA loans are more of the rural areas, so the agricultural areas, so the outskirts of Atlanta. We actually have a USDA map where we can put in an address and see if it is qualified for a USDA loan. Now, USDA loan is a 100% finance loan, and you do have to have at least a 620 for a USDA loan. VA loans, of course, again, that is a veteran product. They can have down to a 580. But again, those conventional mortgages, you have to have at least a 620. Clean everything else. If you had a 620 to get a conventional, your DTI and everything has to be pretty close to perfect. But the higher that score, the more debt you can have, it just has to balance out. So I have stated several times that even if we are able to get you a 100% finance loan, that there are other fees that go into purchasing a home. So what that means is you do need a deposit. In the home buying process, it is called earnest money. So your earnest money, or if you went new construction, your builder deposit is an upfront deposit that you make to the seller, letting them know that you are serious about purchasing this house. How I break it down to my buyers is that is your engagement ring. You found the woman that you love, the man that you love, you found the house that you love. Now the seller is your fiance. You are giving them a ring, which is your earnest money or your deposit, and you're saying, here is how I'm going to vow my love to you, my commitment to you. That is you putting skin in the game. It's usually 1% of the sales price. So at $300,000 house, it's $3,000. But in today's market, even though the market has slowed down, there still are some multiple offers. You want to put a little bit more skin in the game. So what I do for my clients, if the house is at $300,000, I tell them, hey, let's just make it an even $3,500 or $4,000. In earnest money, because you're going to get that back anyway at the closing table. But up front, you're letting this seller know that I am serious about this house, so I'm going to give you a little bit more than that 1%. And it may also make your offer look better than somebody else's who's just giving that 1%. The inspection, once you go under contract, you have a set number of days, which is called your due diligence days. That could be 5 days, that could be 10 days, depending on what your agent has negotiated. And usually that date is negotiated based off of how many offers you guys think this house has, or the agent has told you the house has had. So you're trying to make your offer a little bit more competitive by dropping down the due diligence, because due diligence is your time to go and inspect the house and see if it has any defects or repairs that need to be made, and see if the seller is going to make those repairs. If the seller chooses not to make those repairs and you decide to walk away, and they gave you 10 days due diligence, now they've taken their house off the market for 10 days just for you to walk away. And now they have to start from ground zero. So lately, 3, 5, 7 days is what we've been seeing for due diligence. The inspection is, we hire an inspector who will go out to the property. They go into the crawl space. They check the electrical outlets. They check the plumbing. They check the water pressure. They check the roof. They check everything in the house. And then they give you a very detailed report that breaks down everything that was wrong with the house. And if there's nothing wrong with it at the time, they'll let you know, well, the HVAC at the time was working perfectly, but it is almost at its age of life. It will need servicing soon. So that's what the inspector does. They tell you what needs to be repaired, and they also give you an idea of, once you close on this house, these are the things you need to be prepared for, because they may or may not be repairs that need to be made soon after. That's going to cost you about $350 to $500, depending on the size of the house. If the house has a crawl space, if the house has a basement, if the house has a pool in the back, things like that can make the price go up. Now, the appraisal. It's a perfect world. You put up your earnest money. You've got the contract. We're under contract. The inspection came back squeaky clean. We moving on. So the lender emails you a link and says, we need to order your appraisal. Click the link to make this payment. And you're like, Joan, what is an appraisal? I already had an inspection on the house. So what do they need an appraisal for? Well, the appraisal, again, protects the lender. That appraiser is going to go out, kind of do some of the same things that the inspector did, walk through the house, make sure that everything in the house that the seller said has been repaired. If they said it's been upgraded, they make sure it's been upgraded. They pull comparable analysis of the community based off of what has sold and what's currently on the market. And they come back to the lender and they give them a price. They say this house is either at market value, at contract price, or below market value. It can also be above market value. Now, the only things we need to be concerned with is if it's below market value. Because if it's above, congratulations, you're walking in with equity. The seller cannot raise their price at that point. If it's below, then we have to go back and negotiate with the seller to make sure they're going to drop that price to that appraised price value, because the lender is not going to give you more than what the appraisal says the house is worth. The appraisal is going to be between $300 and $600. and you will pay that directly to the lender. The lender will hire the appraiser, and they will go out. Other processing fees that are to be paid. So the earnest money, the inspection, and the appraisal are all paid prior to closing. The closing cost, which is paid at the closing table, will be the processing fees paid to the lender. Other fees will include the title fees, HOA fees, taxes, and insurance, and that amount is usually about 3 to 5% of the sales price. It is negotiable for either the buyer to pay, the seller to pay, or they split it down the middle and everybody pays their portion. And that is what you call your cash to close. So that is the number that your lender will tell you you need to bring to closing for your closing costs. And that is it. That is the end of my spiel. So I guess, do we have any questions? This is the time that we're going to open the floor up for any questions, comments. I see some people dropped off, but I think we did pretty good. It's only 8:30. We got through everything. So if there's any questions, otherwise, here is our contact information. If you want to go ahead and screenshot that to talk to us offline. My Instagram is, of course, Joan_sales_Atlanta, and I'm going to unmute Selena so she can give you guys hers. Oh, you unmuted yourself? Oh, unmute.
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. So my Instagram is personal. I haven't created a business Instagram that I monitor. So you can find me on LinkedIn under Selena Teasley. I post a lot of financial information there. So if you're someone looking for just more financial education, LinkedIn is where you'll find me. And then all the seminars that I do that are strictly just from a financial perspective, they'll be posted there.
All righty. And do you see any questions coming through or in the chat?
Nope, I do not.
All righty. Well, we want
to.
Hey, thank you, ladies.
Thank you. Thank you, Shonda. Thank you guys for joining us. And this, like I said, this is the first of many. So we will have different speakers coming on with different information. I probably won't, after a while, just because my spiel is repetitive, so I think after I've had a few of these recorded, I'll just let the speaker come on and give their stuff so that it'll be a little bit shorter and it won't take up 2 hours. So I think the next one, I'm probably gonna not do as much because it's repetitive. Like, you hear it once, you hear it 1,000 times. So yeah, so we appreciate you guys. Please let everyone know that we will be coming back with these once a month. So if you got information out of this that helped you, then please share it with somebody because you never know who this information can help. And some people just don't know that they needed this information. So yeah. So thank you guys. Have a good night.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. You got to end it, I think.